Okay, when last we left, we all had a sample inside of the UVI workstation. Mine was this Billie Eilish thing. You could have a drum, whatever it was, it is. We're going to get rid of it anyways. So in order to do that, we're going to come over to this drop down and here hit clear part. And that is just going to erase or empty out this window for us. I'm already clicking on this other window, which is called Multi. And I want to explain that you have 4 potential slots to put samples. And the Billie Eilish or whatever you had was actually already in slot 1. We should still have 4. I'll explain that over here where you see A1, A2, A3, A4, those are MIDI channels, and we'll be talking about that for a second. And there's actually more you can do with this, so I'm just going to go ahead and get it done for us at this point. So let's go ahead and load up samples again. I'm going to leave it in this multi, and just remember that these are individual slots. So I'm going to come over and take my first kick drum and drag it into on top of the word empty for slot A1. And then I'm going to go get a snare drum. I'll take the second one for no good reason except that I heard the first one and I don't really like it that much. And I'm going to put it on part 2. And closed hi-hat in part 3 and open hi-hat in part 4. Okay, so now I do have 4 parts. If I highlight this first one, I have a kick drum. Let's highlight the second one, snare drum, hi-hat, and open hi-hat. And do remember, you don't have to hit C3 if you find it unique or interesting. But for the most part, C3 is going to give you what you expect to hear. It is the sample as it was recorded if you were just to play it back in a media player or if you dragged it into the session. All right, so now we have 4 parts. If we go back to the main, we really just see the one that's highlighted here, so we don't even need to worry about that. So I'm going to keep looking at multi for now. So what I'm going to do is review something very quickly, and I'm going to separate these drums into multiple tracks. It's something that you should do at the end when you're done with your drums. Anyways, so end of a project, end of a song, so you start mixing. So I'm highlighting both clips. I'm coming up to event operations, and select and split notes. I'm going to choose all notes, and I'm going to split them by cutting them and placing them on a new track per pitch. And what that's going to do is take all these drums and separate them into new instrument tracks. But because they don't have any sounds associated with them, you don't hear anything. So for this, I'm just going to hide the original boom bap track. And I'm going to name these based on the instrument that they are. So I have the kick. I can do it this way, so I can hit next. Open hi-hat. Next is closed hi-hat. Oop, I just did my own bad mistake, or not that bad. I didn't hit next, so it's an extra click. And snare. So now I have, let's make these medium. Medium. You can do this in a single click, actually, if you highlight multiple tracks. I don't know how to do it on a PC, though. All right, so, and I don't like this organization. I like to have my kick up top, my snare next, my closed hi-hat, and then my open hi-hat. Now, remember that all of our sounds are in this UVI workstation track. And just for the sake of keeping it simple, this is the quickest way I can think of doing it. These are stereo tracks, so I can take this instrument and simply drag it and put it on my kick drum track. Why the kick drum track? It's my own choice. It could live on any one of these. So this is my kick. why is it so low and so flabby and gross? Because it is playing on C1. So what we want to do is move all these up to C2, C3. So now this kick drum is going to be as recorded. Okay. And I want to do, okay, here we go. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated in Pro Tools. So we now have the kick drum on C3. We need to reveal a column here. And the way that you reveal columns is you come over to this white triangle, and you can actually reveal a number of different things. You can put the sends that you normally see in your mix window. For the most part, all of us should see the I/O, because it is where I've been helping you make sure that you can hear yourself, that it says output, headphones, whatever your card is. We all have different things happening, which is part of the pain of the year. What we want to see is the instrument column. All right, so now that I've selected that, I can see this instrument. And if you look here, it says UVI Workstation Channel 1. Well, if we go back to the UVI Workstation and look at the multi window, A1 is the kick drum. That is what's called a MIDI channel. If I hover over it, you see it is the MIDI output selector. So what we're going to do for all of these is go to the snare where it says none, to the MIDI output selector. We're going to go UVI Workstation that says kick. You may see, you won't see all these tracks because you don't have so many instruments. These are all hidden. And I'm going to choose UVI Workstation Channel 2. For the closed hi-hat, UVI Workstation Channel 3. And for the open hi-hat, UVI Workstation Channel 4. If I play these all now, you start to hear them. But let's go ahead and move them from C, whatever it is. This is actually D1. We're going to move this up to C3. Everything's going to be on C3. All right, let's do the same thing with the hi-hat, C3. And with this open hi-hat, C3. Now again, it doesn't have to be C3. If you like this a little bit lower, that's fine. All right, so we have a new drum beat with all of our instruments being triggered. Now, there's a little bit of a problem here, except not really. We hear the hi-hat and the snare being triggered at the same time. That's fine. Otherwise, everything else isn't playing together at the same time. And what we're going to do, we're going to take this one step further. We're going to get these sounds coming out their own outputs. So coming back to the UVI Workstation, we're going to go where this we're going to click on settings. All right, so instead of mixer, we've clicked on the window settings tab. Where you see main output, we're going to leave the kick drum as main output. We're going to click and change the snare drum to 2. Click on the hi-hat part 3 and change it to 3, and change this one to 4. All right, so now we have the kick drum on main out, the snare drum on out 2, the hi-hat on out 3, and the open hi-hat on out 4. What we need to do now is connect the outputs of the UVI Workstation to the inputs of each of our other MIDI tracks, instrument tracks. So remember, the MIDI output selector is on MIDI channel 2. We're going to come up to where it says no input, down to plugin UVI Workstation output 2. And we're just going to keep going in sequence. No input, plugin UVI Workstation output 3. no input plugin UVI workstation output 4. Now, what this does is it gives us individual outputs for each of these drums. All right, which means we can adjust volumes for each of them. We can put different amounts of reverb when we want to. It gives us a whole host of control. So what did we do? We learned the difference between kind of looking at the main window that shows us the waveform, what a multi is, which is a 4-part, maybe even more, but for us it's a 4-part sound bank essentially. We've learned what MIDI channels are. We've learned how to select the MIDI channel and communicate between one track and a channel on one instrument. So remember, there are no instruments on these tracks. The MIDI is communicating with a particular channel on the UVI workstation. If you want to think of it as an instrument, this is communicating with the kick drum. This track right here, because of the output selector, is communicating with number 2, number 3, number 4. There you go. A little bit more with the UVI workstation. Enjoy.